Hello, I'm Craig and welcome to another episode of Football Kit Memories. Today I meet prolific tweeter and king of the football meme, Jonny Sharples. We talk about Jonny's successes on the platform, some of the crazy situations it's put him in, and we find out whether he thinks Twitter is ultimately a good thing or a bad one. We cover the important work he does with mental health charity Calm, his football manager alter ego, and his music podcast, Yourfest. During the show, I asked Jonny to pick out 3 of his favourite football shirts and tell us a little bit about what they mean to him. There's Newcastle, Boca Juniors, and perhaps a controversial version of the iconic Celtic hoops. You can listen to this and other episodes of Football Kit Memories on all major audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do subscribe, share, and above all, enjoy the podcast. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm joined by Twitter sensation. It's Jonny Sharples. How you doing, mate?
I'm really good, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. You grimaced when I said that description. Is that not good?
It's not, honestly, it's not the worst thing that I've ever been called, both professionally and privately. I went on 5 Live a couple of years ago and they introduced me as former Manchester United midfielder,
Really?
Jonny Sharples. Yeah, they obviously, there's a guy that played youth football, possibly in the 70s, quite way back, called John Sharples. And I think they just Googled my name and seen his Wikipedia page and assumed we're the same person. When someone that must be about 2 decades his junior turned up at the studio, they must have been quite taken aback, but they rolled with it. They were fine. But yeah, Twitter sensation is absolutely fine by me.
Well, mate, I think you are. Do you know what? I've followed you for years and you've got so many followers and you get so much traction. I guess for anybody that is listening and doesn't know what you do you want to give us a bit of background on who you are and what you do?
So a Twitter sensation and idiot off the internet. Those are probably the 2 best descriptors of what I do and why people might have heard of me. I'm a Newcastle supporter basically that got quite lucky on Twitter and people found him and found the things that I said funny and shared them and got more followers and more followers. And I have stupid jokes that I keep going, and I've done stupid stunts like try and put Harry Maguire on a £50 note. Harry Maguire riding an inflatable unicorn on the £50 note and various different things like that. So I'm just someone that says stupid things on the internet and hopefully makes people laugh. I certainly make myself laugh most of the time, so that's the main thing.
So, how do you do all the stuff? Do you do it all on Photoshop? You're a bit of a whiz on that.
So what happened was I years and years and years ago, probably what year were we in? 2021. So it must have been about 2013, so 8 years ago. One of my friends, Alwyn, who's a Manchester United fan, he's really good at Photoshop, always has been. And then he would post what he'd done on Twitter and it would get a lot of attention. And the same went with bearded genius, Noz. He's incredible on Photoshop, would post these incredible pictures up and like fake movie posters and things like that. And they would get a lot of traction on Twitter. So I thought, I want a piece of that pie, basically. I want some of that attention for myself. So I couldn't use Photoshop, so I used to do things on Microsoft Paint, and I really learned how you could not to the same standard, not even close to the same standard, but rudimentary, learn how to roughly make things on Paint. And I knew Microsoft Paint, back to front to back, everything that there was, everything you could possibly do on Microsoft Paint, I learned how to do it, and then gradually built myself up. So there's a free web app called Pixlr.
Right.
Very similar to Photoshop, does a lot of the same stuff. So I, again, learned how to do all the stuff in that. And that's what I do most of the stuff now on. And it's just a case of, I don't know if it's a bit of an addictive personality, and we might cover my issues with Football Manager later on, I'm sure. But it's just, really wanting to learn things inside out and learn everything you can about them and make use of them elsewhere. So make use of them, make people's birthday cards and Valentine's cards and Christmas cards. And it's useful outside of Twitter as well. So it's just one of those skills that I decided I was going to pick up mainly to try and get people's attention on Twitter and on the internet, but has been useful elsewhere. But yeah, it's just a bit of sometimes photoshopping, sometimes just capturing the moment. Like I say, the thing with memes is as well, there's already most of the work's there for you.
Yeah.
It's just fitting your punchline into those things. So they're relatively easy things to do and maybe mess about a bit with if it's a picture that's being a meme at the moment, like the distracted boyfriend from a couple of years ago and things like that. It's just a case of sometimes putting somebody else's head on it, and that's relatively easy to do. So it's just always keeping an eye on what's getting traction and what's going viral and things like that, and putting your own spin on it a lot of the time, I think.
I guess it's like the race to kind of get the joke out there as well. So you've got to actually go and produce it on something, and then like you've got to hope that nobody gets to the joke before you on Twitter and all that kind of thing, because that's a heartbreak when you've got something funny and someone beats you to the punch, isn't it? It's so annoying.
Yeah, it's especially as well if you thought of a joke that's football's full of very fleeting moments. So like there's 90 minutes and something funny might happen, but it's over and done with very quickly. But that can roll over on Twitter for a long time. But then sometimes something you might notice, very fleeting moment that you think's really funny, but it might take you half an hour, 40 minutes to actually do this elaborate thing that you want to do. And by that time, the moment's moved on, or there's better jokes out there, and you spent 40 minutes or whatever trying to produce this joke, and it's just not happening. So there's been plenty of occasions where that's come to me as well. Plenty of occasions where people do the same joke or exactly the same joke or a better version of that joke, or they might have got there a millisecond or two before you, and theirs has already gone off, and it's like a bit of a pain in the back, a bit of a pain in the behind. But yeah, I think that's the joy of both football and Twitter, that these things happen so quickly and they move on so quickly, and they snowball really quickly as well into much bigger moments, much funnier moments, and people put their own spin on things and make them even better, and then you perhaps put your own spin on their version of it. And that's certainly what happened recently with the Four Lads and the Sea Shanty. People were mixing two memes together, and then people putting their own spin on that spin and things like that. So it's fun. I think a lot of the problem is sometimes you always have to be on it, and you always have to be on Twitter and ready. And if you want a joke to be ready, so you can't predict a lot of things. So I have very few things in my drafts on Twitter.
Right.
I think I have two things in there in the moment. One's been in there for a very long time because it's very specific thing needs to happen for that joke to work. But if it does happen, then I think that joke's really funny. But it relies on a lot of things. Another one is something that one of those things that's always in the back of people's consciousness, but always trying to work out what a spin could be. So something similar was for a long time I had. I don't know if you remember the Hastings Direct advert. So it was 0800 001066 was the old jingle to it. And for ages, I had 0800 00 or whatever the beginning was, it saved in my drafts with little things around it, waiting. And I think Trent Alexander-Arnold was the person that alerted me to it, because he wears shirt number 66. Right. So it was waiting for someone wearing a number 10 shirt to be stood beside him with the 66 shirt on. And eventually it happened. So I was able to tweet that. But I've got another thing similar that needs a punchline similar to that to happen. And nothing's happened yet. But yeah, it's
keep
just...
them in the holster then. So that's how you get there with the speed. There are a few that you kind of write and think about, I'll use that in the future. I need the perfect storm of events to happen.
Yeah, and sometimes those events never happen, and so things are just sat in the drafts for ages, and eventually I'll just go, it's never. But it's as well as being in the drafts, it's obviously in the back of my head as well. So if I delete that draft and then that thing does eventually happen, then I can always, hopefully, my mind won't have degraded that much, and other things have replaced it. Other useless facts and bits of information will have replaced that I can reproduce it quite quickly. But yeah, I think having those to hand is often the way to do it quickly as well, is to have those few drafts saved up. But again, it relies on a perfect storm, like you say, in certain circumstances happening to really make it fly.
Do you know what? I was going to ask you, so you obviously have to be on Twitter a lot in order to kind of get, drop those jokes and get that engagement and stuff like that. Overall, kind of, obviously you like it because you're so prolific on it, but do you think it can be a bad thing at times, Twitter?
Obviously, I think we're talking at a time when Twitter's in the news for the very negative real world things that happen on it. You see a lot of, especially as football supporters, and I don't think neither myself or yourself or anybody listening is blind to the fact that there are a lot of people that will say very horrific, racist, homophobic, transphobic, misogynistic and sexist things on Twitter. And they'll direct them towards people. And I think it's very, very negative in that fact. And I don't know how we move away from that. But at the same time, I don't know if you ever have, but I've posted things on Twitter, such as, where a Premier League footballs happens to be on in the background of a video that I've recorded,
Right.
and the Premier League can get that removed in like 5 minutes. Why can't Twitter react to these people that are saying horrific things, especially if they're being mass reported by a number of people, which will often happen? Why aren't Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or whoever removing these people, removing their accounts as quickly as they'll remove copyrighted material from stakeholders like the Premier League? So there is a lot of horrible negative things that happen on Twitter that do need to change as well. Like I said, I think I might have quite an addictive personality, so Twitter's can obviously be quite bad from that, especially if you're getting that rush of this is a good joke and people are finding it funny and people are enjoying it, and you're seeing the retweets and favorites rack up. That can be quite, that rush that you get from that can be quite an addictive thing. And I think it sounds silly, because I think people that have had, addictions to other stuff would probably think that that's, an odd thing to get that adrenaline rush from. But I think a lot of people are addicted to social media in that respect as well, from the respect that they earn from it, from the clout that they get from it, and that can be quite bad long term from them. But there are a lot of positives as well. Social media gives a voice to people that otherwise might struggle. They can remain anonymous. They can remain anonymous and really find themselves and find their place in the world, whether it's their gender identity, whether it's their sexuality, and they can explore those things in a relatively safe environment. And it also enables people to connect with other people that they might not be able to connect with, whether it's, especially at the moment, they might be quite lonely in the pandemic, and they might be restricted to being in their own house or their own room if they flat share and things like that. It enables people to connect that way, and it also enables people to connect to people that might also have various things going on in their lives, people that are struggling with their sexuality, people that are struggling with mental health difficulties. They can find a crowd that are going through the same thing. So there are a lot of positives that come out of social media. But again, like we touched on at the beginning, there are a lot of horrible negatives, and it's about amplifying those positives and about amplifying those voices, and then also reacting to those negatives. And the companies that run these social media websites and platforms, it's their responsibility to get rid of these people as soon as possible, and not just leave these horrific messages that hang in that other people can read and be negatively affected by as well.
100% agree, mate. I think it's really well put. Just kind of changing tack a little bit, I wanted to ask you as well, in terms of what you do on Twitter and the kind of, the traction you get, like I mentioned, what's like the craziest thing that's happened to you?
There's a few things that I suppose. I got to go and play at St James's Park, which was an incredible thing as a Newcastle supporter. So the end of the 17-18 season, so it would have been May 2018. I got to go and play at St James's Park. The sponsors, Newcastle sponsors, Footy 88, contacted me and said, look, we're putting this match on at the end of the season. It'll be like local journalists and a few people off Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that. Do you want to come down and play? Well, come up and play. And I was like, yeah, of course. So I scored at St James's Park. I gave it the Shearer celebration. And, there's no crowd there. But again, that buzz that you feel, I don't play as much 7-a-side, 5-a-side, 11-a-side as I used to. But even then, that buzz that you got from scoring a goal in a 7-a-side Tuesday night at the local leisure centre thing, it's a massive buzz. It feels like you've made a difference to your team, even if it is only like a, whatever your team's called, into your nan or whatever you want to call them. So you feel like, you've made a difference to that team. You've, earned a point for your teammates. It's fun. But to do it in a Premier League stadium with the team that you support, wearing their shirt, albeit I was wearing the away shirt, which I wasn't quite as happy about as if I was wearing the black and white stripes. But to score a goal for your team in that environment was just incredible. And give it the Shearer. I think we won about 16-5 was the final score against these local journalists. So I would have been a bit annoyed if I hadn't scored, if we'd scored 16. But that was an incredible feeling. I also I got to go and have Christmas dinner with the England team in 2019. Well, 5 of the England team: Tyrone Mings, Nick Pope, Harry Winks, John Stones and Tammy Abraham.
Okay.
So I got to have Christmas dinner with them as part of a mental health initiative that they were doing.
Right.
And go and speak to them about the work that I've done with Calm as a mental health charity, and speak to them about that. And then again at the beginning of 2020, I got to go and play table football with Tony Adams, Ledley King, Scott McTominay, John McGinn, and then Prince William as well. So that was quite a strange thing to have come about from Twitter and the stuff that I've done on Twitter. So
right,
a few, it's weird that these, and I think you see it a lot across social media. These people that have done what look like relatively small things, and then they eventually snowball and become bigger. Like the lad that went on stage at Glastonbury a couple of years ago with Dave and did Thiago Silva, and then he just blew up massively. And the four, like we mentioned, those four lads that just happened to have their photograph taken, and that became a meme on Twitter. They've now been on, Good Morning Britain and spoken to the BBC and stuff like that. So, these fleeting moments, people really can build a whole reputation on them and have these opportunities that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. So, scoring at St James's Park and then meeting Prince William are probably the two strangest things that have happened. Unfortunately, I didn't score at St James's Park in an FA Cup semi-final and then met Prince William as part of the, being at Wembley for the final. That wasn't quite how that would have been how I had it planned out when I was a child, but obviously the reality was slightly different. And but nonetheless, still quite a good thing to have been involved with.
Yeah. So you mentioned briefly there as well that you're an ambassador for Calm, right?
Yeah.
How did that
all come? So in 2014, my brother passed away by suicide when he was 36.
Right.
It was in December of 2014, so right before Christmas, like a couple of days before Christmas. And so that Christmas sort of became a non-event, and me and my family got together still. Me and my sister and my parents got together and we had Christmas dinner, but obviously it wasn't the same. We were grieving. And in that time, my dad found this charity called Calm as a way to so charities to us to raise money for, because they help young men that were going through similar things that my brother was going through, and they run a helpline for people that are not feeling too great to telephone up and to speak to somebody about whatever crisis they're going through. And so we started raising money for them, and then I did a bit more work to raise money for them through a few different ways. And then eventually, as I, using my Twitter account to talk about them and to talk about my brother and what he went through. And then as I sort of grew on Twitter and was still raising awareness and money for Calm, they eventually contacted me and said, do you want to become an ambassador for them? Right. And I was like, well, what does it involve? And they were like, well, it's not too dissimilar to what you're already doing. You're basically just using your voice and using your platform to raise awareness for Calm, and we can just carry on talking about your brother and your experiences and what you went through and what he went through and things like that, and how it's affected you and impacted you, and what more can be done to help people like your brother. And so I was like, yeah, of course. So I've done that now, and that's how I became involved with the Christmas dinner with the England team and meeting Prince William. And I also get to go and meet people and listen to what they've been through, listen to their stories and how charity like Calm has helped them firsthand. Because if my brother might have known about Calm, he might still be with us, right, and he would have maybe telephoned them and made use of those services. But it's good to hear from those people that did know about Calm and were able to ring it up, and it's really helped them and made them manage their mental health a little bit better, and they're still here and they're still able to tell their stories. So those stories are equally as important to tell as well. So it's been a real privilege to work with them. Do a lot of stuff with on their football side of things, because obviously football is a really ripe environment for young men to be able to meet up and talk with each other, and to go insert mental health discussions into that environment's really useful. So yeah, I've become a bit of a figurehead for their mental health and football work as well. So right, it's been really positive thing, especially out of something so negative as what happened with my brother, to be able to then go and use those lessons that I learned and the stories of my brother to be able to help other people and to be able to advertise this incredible charity has been a real good way of continuing the legacy of my brother and still being able to talk about him.
Well, it really underlines what you said about using social media for positivity as well, doesn't it? It's really fantastic stuff, mate. I wanted to ask you as well, you don't just do Twitter, you've got a podcast as well, right?
Yeah, so for all the love of football that I have, as is evident on Twitter and the conversations we've had, music's also a massive love of mine. And so last year, me and my friend Tommy, we started a podcast about music festivals. As much as I love music, I hate music festivals. I
Right.
hate hate the toilets, hate the camping, hate the fact that there's other people there, which isn't very helpful. But my friend Tommy, he loves music festivals. He's been overseas to them. He's been to Glastonbury a few times. So we started this podcast because obviously all the festivals last summer were cancelled. It's
Right.
looking like many of the festivals this summer are going to be cancelled as well. So we thought, I don't like them. So if I could create my own fantasy music festival where all the bands that I like could be there, but nobody else was invited, that would be perfect for me. So what would other people's dream music festivals look like? So each week we get a different guest on and they come and tell us, what about their experience in music festivals, whether they like them, and then what their dream music festival would be like. So where they'd hold it, what the name of it would be, and which bands they'd have play. So we've had Ed Gamble come on and say how he'd have Slipknot and Rage Against the Machine play.
Wow.
We've had like his obsession with Slipknot was like, I really like Slipknot. They're a band that I've loved since I was a teenager, but to hear him come out and talk about them, he's seen them in, where the crowd was 100 people and he was, one of those 100, and they still put on the same stage show as they would have if they were playing, Download or Reading and Leeds or one of these huge festivals. So that was incredible. Then we've had other people come on and say that Ivor Graham came on and say that he'd have his dad's band play. Like his dad's just like jam band would play alongside, I think it was the Flaming Lips and things like that. Then we've heard some incredible festivals. Max Rushton from the Guardian football podcast, he came on and told us how he'd have every single artist from Now That's What I Call Music 12 play the one song that was on Now That's What I Call Music. So it's just, being able to sit down and talk with these incredible comedians and presenters and musicians and hear what music they like and what they think of music festivals. It's been a real good way of, passing the time during the pandemic, the last year and a bit or whatever it's been now. So
Very nice, mate. Very nice. So listen, I've got one last question for you before we start talking about some football shirts. What do you think of the phrase footy banter?
I think banter's a phrase that has so many horrible connotations to it. It makes me think of Nando's, makes me think of Paddy Power, makes me think of makes me think of those Ladbrokes adverts with the Jay from the In-Betweeners, where he'd come on and shout, lads, lads, lads. That's the sort of thing. But again, the word banter fulfills so many necessities of language that you want to say. Like it's a horrible word to feel yourself saying, but sometimes it's a necessary word because it's the thing it describes is perfect. So in terms of football banter, I think there's obviously good banter, which is, with your mates at the pub or whatever, or on Twitter, on my Twitter account. That's where all the good banter is. Or someone like Football Cliches, and there's Adam's incredible at that side of things. But then there's obviously the negatives, and people will, I'm sure these people that have been saying horrific racist things on Twitter would probably call that, it's just a bit of banter as well. So I think it's a hard word to try and use because it's a catch-all term, and whether it's being used correctly or incorrectly or being used for the right thing or the wrong thing, I think often it all gets encapsulated into one. And so, I think I'd probably err on the side of it being a bad term, but again, it's one that many people would ascribe to my Twitter account, would ascribe to the conversations that we've had already today. They would probably say that that's a bit of football banter. So, it's a difficult thing.
But I think specifically footy banter is the one that gets me, because it's like bad accounts that retweet things, and there's a lot of that kind of trying to grab attention on Twitter by stealing other people's jokes or making very cliched jokes that you've seen before. There's not a lot of originality.
Yeah, I think like troll football and people like that, those accounts that were massive, say 5 or 6 years ago, that are somehow still going now, and they're just doing the same, using the same, I don't know, meme things that came from Reddit, the Forever Alone and people like that. So and I think the word footy is a it's a word that I would have used quite often as a teenager, especially if I was, there was, character limits on text messages to ask if my friends wanted to play. But I think it's a word now that I think we as a society have moved on from. And I think call it football. Just call it football.
So, mate, let's talk about some football shirts. First question is, what in general do football shirts mean to you?
I really like football shirts. I won't say I'm an adamant a collector of them, but they're sort of a real signifier of teams, which seems an obvious thing to say. But if you see someone walking down the road and they're wearing a red football shirt and you can see it from the back, that's probably going to be one of probably Manchester United or Liverpool, where I live. Could be Salford City, but it's unlikely.
Right.
If you see black and white stripes, it's probably Newcastle, but it might be Notts County, or it could be something else. So straight away what those football shirts are. It's a real easy signifier of who someone might support or what sort of football teams that they like. I have a lot of football shirts, not as many as like an avid collector would have.
Right.
I really like certain ones. Really don't like certain ones. Like overall, like the club's colours. I like Minnesota United in the MLS.
Right.
So they have a really nice grey and blue one.
Okay.
And so that I really like that. And so those sort of, it's from a design perspective, I suppose. Always loved football shirts. I think it is the fact that those colours, immediately you know who someone supports as soon as you see the colours.
Yeah.
So it's just a shame that the team I support have two of the most basic colours going in black and white. So and it's an easy thing to colour in when you're a kid as well. So if you've got a white piece of paper, you just need to do the black stripes, which is what I used to do. So no, I think I've always liked them, and they've always, to me, there was a thing going around Twitter maybe last week or so of what seemed posh to you as a child, and I think football shirts were something that seemed always quite posh to me as a child, because you always saw in the newspapers that outrageous Manchester United released their third kit in 3 years and it cost £60, and it's like, wow, that's, if you can afford all those football shirts, you must be pretty well off. So I think now, especially when I started going abroad, both with my parents on holiday and by myself, and you see how much some football shirts are overseas, and you think here in England we're actually quite relatively reasonably priced in terms of comparable to how much they are in, say, France or Germany. They're like 80 to 100 quid a pop sometimes for a new football shirt. So I don't think it's too bad here. But there's something that I've always, from when I first got into football, something that I think I've always really liked.
So it kind of leads us quite nicely on to your first choice. So you picked 3 kits. Well, you were supposed to pick 3 kits, but you picked 2 for your first choice, but I quite like them, so we let it slide. So you picked the Newcastle 95 to 96 season home and away shirts by Adidas.
Yeah, so somebody that, as you say, runs a podcast with quite a strict format, it's always quite annoying when someone comes on and immediately ruins that format. So my apologies for doing that straight off the bat here. But to me, those 2 kits are not just speaking as a Newcastle fan, but speaking as a football fan and a fan of Premier League football. I think they're possibly the 2 most iconic kits across the Premier League from 1992 to present. The Grandad collar on both the kits, the away kit with the maroon and blue hoops, and the home kit with the black and white stripes. And I think with black and white stripes, I know you're a Celtic fan, with the green and white hoops. They're quite formulaic, and it's quite hard to, I think some other clubs would find it easier to defer away from the, Man United with a red kit, they can add extra colours in, but with a black and white kit or green and white hoops, you're quite restricted on what you can do with it. You can even make the stripes bigger or smaller. You can't really get rid of them altogether, and you can't really do too much with them. But this Newcastle kit is just plain black and white stripes, and it sounds weird, but it's done really, really well. And they've, it's got the brown ale sponsorship on, which is obviously an iconic thing. It's Adidas, and Adidas with this incredibly grand, they're not even at the time, I think Adidas and Nike were the two big things. Umbro maybe a little bit because they did the England kit, but they weren't a Lecoq Sportif that you might not really have heard of, and they weren't, even Puma and Pony and Puma and people like that weren't that relatively well regarded. So for Newcastle to have Adidas, and it's just such a nice kit, and it just brings back these incredible memories of when Newcastle were actually good at football as well. So we nearly won the league in 95, 96. The home kit carried on into 96, 97 after we'd signed Shearer. So we beat Manchester United 5-0 that year as well. So they're just intrinsically linked with these really, really fond memories. And they're also the first two football kits that I owned, which is obviously quite a helpful thing. So I grew up in Preston. I grew up in a little town just outside Preston called Penwortham. In Penwortham, we had one sports shop, which is now half of an Italian restaurant. And and it was a sports shop where you bought, sports equipment. You buy a tennis racket from there, or you buy a football from there, or you'd buy some dumbbells from there. It wasn't really a football shirt, sports shop, but they just so happened to have that Newcastle away kit in there. So I remember my mum and, it would have been, I was going to say my mum and dad. It would definitely have been my mum because she very much spoils me as a child and now. So my mum bought me this football shirt, and I wish I still had it because one, it's the maroon and blue away kit's worth quite a lot of money now if it's in good condition. And two, it probably would still fit me because I haven't grown that much since I was 10 years old. So I would dearly love to still have it. And then the next kit that I got was the home kit. So it would have still been our home kit. So I think it would have been a decent wedge of my parents to pay. Probably would have been a Christmas present or a birthday present, or the two combined, because my birthday's near enough to Christmas that was often the case. But I then got the home kit with the number 9 on the back of it as well. And there's a great photograph that of me at my grandparents' golden wedding, where we were having a relatively posh meal in this nice restaurant, and my mum's there in a nice dress, and my dad's there in a shirt and tie, and I'm sat between them in the Newcastle United home shirt from 1996. It's quite how my grandparents would have reacted, because I come from a family where nobody really likes football. My mum and dad don't like football, and neither set of my grandparents were particularly fond of football. So quite how they reacted at the time. But to have these two football shirts as your first football shirts is obviously, it sounds like, when someone asks you what was the first gig you went to, and you say it was some really cool band, and people know that you're lying. It feels a bit like, what was your first football shirt? Well, it was like possibly the most iconic football shirt in the Premier League. Certainly at the time, maybe in history, and definitely Newcastle's most iconic one. So it's just they're just really nice. I bought so I gave away or my parents gave away the home and away shirt. So for years afterwards, it's been a case of trying to find a reasonably priced, because even the home one goes for a lot of money as well. Replacement for it. So I think I've run through about. And it's also trying to find the right size, because 90s sizes are very different to modern sizes, especially. So they're either massive, like a small. I wear small or extra small. So a small is either massive, or small is very small because it's shrunk in the wash over the intervening 25 years. So it's. I think I finally found one now. So but I'd love to get the away kit again, but like I say, they're so expensive to try and pick them up from somewhere, or people have they're fakes, which is I think you obviously, as football shirt collectors, you find a lot of them, people trying to especially now there's this big trend to be wearing football shirts again, and especially retro football shirts. We've seen that with how much classic football shirts have really blown up and expanded their business, and people want a piece of that as well. And so they will get hold of or recreate fake football shirts and try and sell them for the 200 or whatever amount it is to try and capitalize on people's love of these football shirts as well. So haven't managed to find the away kit again yet, but like I say, just two incredible iconic kits. I think when you think of Newcastle, they're probably the first two kits that come to mind as well. That whole team. I think those kits have ruined football kits for me, because nothing at Newcastle has been as good since. teams have ruined Newcastle for me, because we're never going to have a team as good as Ginola and Shearer and Ferdinand and Beardsley and Lee and Albert ever again. So I was very much spoiled from a very early age, and everything as a Newcastle fan has been downhill from there on in.
Okay, mate. So your next shirt is a bit of a more successful team. It's Boca Juniors. It's their 09-10 shirt by Nike. How come you pick this one?
So Boca Juniors, as a kid, I came to football relatively late. So after Euro '96, like I say, I came from a family that didn't really like football, so it was left to me to sort of discover it myself. And so I learned about football through Championship Manager, it was then,
Right.
and through reading books and learning absolutely everything there was to learn about football. And so Boca Juniors, one, they have a strange name. From an English perspective, it's not a United or a city or a town. Juniors, it sounds like youth football, and that's the only way we would have ever come across that name before. But as well, the blue and gold kit just looked like nothing that we have in this country. Chelsea wore a similar-ish blue, and no one really wears that yellowy gold color that Boca have across the band across the middle. So it was so different. So as a kid and growing up, probably much older than I would care to reveal, when I was creating my own teams on FIFA and Football Manager, the home kit that the fake teams that I would have would always have a Boca Juniors style kit. It would always be blue with the gold band across the middle and gold trim and things like that.
Right.
And so it's just it's just such a beautiful kit. And the 09-10 one just has this. There's a lot of Boca kits have quite a bright blue, whereas this one's got a much deeper dark blue, which contrasts with the gold really, really nice. And it has the LG sponsor, which is quite a small little trim sponsor. A lot of the earlier ones will have Pepsi, which is quite a cool brand to have on your football shirt, but it's quite a big overbearing sponsor as well. So that Boca shirt is just beautiful. It was also helped by the fact that Nobby Solano, who's one of my favourite ever Newcastle players, also played for Boca Juniors.
Did he really?
Alongside, he's the only footballer to have been a teammate of both Diego Maradona and Shola Ramiobi. So there we go. So he played when Maradona came back for his last swan song at Boca. That's when Solano was there. So he also played for them, which is a great thing. But yeah, it's just such a nice kit, and especially this one. It's another one where I spent a long time trying to get a hold of the football kit.
Right.
I eventually got it a couple of years later off eBay. But it's one of those kits that you don't want to wear to play football in, because you don't want to get mud on it, or you don't want to get any sort of friction burn marks on it if you're playing on AstroTurf. You don't want anyone to pull it and pull away at the seams if they're pulling your shirt back. You don't want to. But again, it's one of those things where you sort of get a bit of kudos if you turn up wearing a Boca Juniors shirt. One, you have to be. I'm not very good at football, but you have to be pretty good at football if you're turning up in a Boca Juniors shirt, or an Argentina shirt, or a Brazil shirt, or with pink boots and things like that. It's one of those things where you have to be relatively good at football if you're going to turn up in one of them. If you turn up wearing a Newcastle shirt, it's probably expected that you're not necessarily going to be that good at football. But if you're wearing a South American football shirt, you have to either be good or have the theatrics. And lucky for me, I had the theatrics when I used to play football instead. So, but yeah, just such a nice kit.
I was going to say this one has like quite a smart collar, so you could have got away with that golden wedding anniversary with this one if you had it.
I had the argument that it's technically is gold in colour as well, so add that to it. But again, I think my parents would have had even more questions if, as a 10 or 11-year-old, I was turning up. Can I wear this Boca Juniors shirt and started talking to them about Diego Maradona and Claudio Caniggia and all these people that I learnt about from Championship Manager. So no, I don't think I'd have quite got away with it.
So, mate, let's move on to your final shirt. So, I'm a Celtic fan. I was quite surprised you picked this one, but there's a bit of a story behind it. So, it's a Celtic home by Nike. It's a 2013 to 2015. So, I think it lasted 2 seasons, this one, and it was the last one by Nike.
So, like I said before, with Newcastle shirts, it's quite hard to deviate from the established look of them, the black and white stripes. And I said it's a bit of a similarity with Celtic. It's hard to go away from the green and white hoops. But I like on this one that they mixed it up a little bit. And I don't know how you feel as an actual Celtic fan, the way that they split off the hoops into almost pinstripe hoops.
Yeah.
And I really like the fact that they tried something a little bit different. And I think it works. A lot of times, you know, you've seen with Newcastle kits where they try and do things a bit differently with the stripes and it doesn't quite work. But I think with this one, it does work quite well. Again, as a Celtic fan, you might say differently that it's an abomination, and yeah, they've ruined the long established traditions of Celtic Football Club.
Yeah.
But for me, this shirt, it's not just like from 2013 to 2015. It's the shirt that Celtic wore in the 2022 Champions League final. It's a Celtic shirt that they've worn to glory numerous times, because I was Celtic manager on Football Manager in a save that I started in 2013 and is still playing in 2021. I nearly said in 2101 because that's what year I'm in.
Are you really?
But, yeah, 2102 now.
So the game goes that far?
Yeah, it carries on infinitely, but no one's established the naming for years beyond 2099. So I don't know whether we say 2102 or 2102. So I'm not going to be around in the real world to be part of this. I shouldn't imagine. But anyway, a very long save on Football Manager where I started off at Dynamo Dresden, went to Brighton, went to Hearts, and then in 2017, so 4 years into the game, but 4 years ago,
right,
I got the Celtic job, and I've been at Celtic ever since, and had these incredible players, some of them real. So Cristiano Ronaldo came to Celtic at one point. Heung-min Son was at Celtic. Who else real did we have? It's that long ago, I can't remember. But these great real players, and then bringing through the new gens that you get on Football Manager. And the best new gen that I had was Ivica Strok, who was this Croatian striker that I got for £5 million from NK Zagreb in Croatia.
Right.
And snatched him from under the noses of Chelsea and PSG and Barcelona and Manchester City and these great, you know, super clubs that have infinite amounts of money and we're going to win titles regardless. So I tempted him to Celtic Park. He played as we moved to Sharples Park, the second best stadium in the world. We now play in the Sharples Arena, slightly bigger stadium in Europe.
Wow.
But he was just this incredible player that I had, and we touched on my brother passing away so earlier. And when he passed away and I was at my sister's with my family, any moment that we had spare, I would play Football Manager because there's nothing else to do. And it's a form of escapism and takes you into this world where you're the greatest manager in the country. And so I take charge of Celtic, and Ivica kept scoring, and he scored 836 goals for Celtic.
Wow.
And Jimmy McGrory has one of the best goal scoring records. I think, is it 599 goals for Celtic? I think it's one of the records for a single club.
Yeah, but barely any Scotland caps, of course.
Yeah, so it looked this goal scoring record of Jimmy McGrory's looked long into the distance, and then Ivica broke it and then just ran away with it and scored 836 goals. Not even taking into account the 152 that he scored for Croatia.
Wow.
Which is again a record. But he was sublime. He was just brilliant. So I got this Celtic shirt with Strock and number 10 on the back, and the National Football Museum, which is based in Manchester, put on an exhibition of memorabilia from the history of football games, mainly FIFA and Football Manager, but with a few other ones thrown in there. And they messaged me and said, "Look, would you be willing to loan us a Ivica Strock Celtic shirt?" And I was like, yeah, it's one of those surreal things that comes about through Twitter. And I was like, of course. Yeah, so his shirt went and hung up in the National Football Museum. Along with that, they also have like Diego Maradona's shirt from the Hand of God game. They have like the original FA Cup in there and things like that. And then to be able to go to the opening of this exhibition and see Ivica Strock's shirt there was surreal. But they also had the football program. So I made a football program, which I think I've got copy of it next to, which is for an audio medium. Me showing this to the camera isn't very good, but I produced a load of football programs for Avicii's testimonial match and had them printed and sold them to raise money for Calm.
Right.
And so the football museum asked if they could put one of those in there as well, and I was like, yeah, of course. So yeah, the shirt, I don't have any particular memories of it from a Celtic perspective, from a real life Celtic perspective, I should say.
Yeah.
You know, I think you won the title wearing it a couple of times, both seasons. But I know Virgil van Dijk wore it. I think John Guidetti, would he have been there? I'm just thinking of people.
Yeah, like guys like, I think it was I think Lennon was the manager in the first season, and Ronnie Dyler came in the second season, so it was a bit of a transitional period. So you like a lot of that team that beat Barcelona was kind of on its way out, and then a few of the new guys came in that necessarily didn't work out. So like Stefan Johansson, who's at Fulham now, was one that came in and played in that one. Chris Commons as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of people whose heads I took off to put Avicii's head on top of them.
He has his own Twitter account, right? Avicii's Drops.
He does. He's gone very quiet because, partly because in 2102, he was born in 2001. So by 2102, you'd have to assume he was no longer with us, to put it politely. But at the same time, it's difficult enough to. Oh yeah, he'd have a statue outside Sharples Arena. He'd have all sorts. His goal scoring record has been. So I've had a player score 725 goals for Celtic, but that's still 111 goals behind Avicii Strock. I just can't. It's hard to imagine that's like if we're recording this a couple of days after Lionel Messi scored his 650th goal for Barcelona.
Yeah,
and that's still 180 goals behind what Strock scored for Celtic. It's just a ridiculous. Even by Football Manager standards, which is obviously a different metric to measure things because it's a fictional world, but even by Football Manager standards, 836 goals for one club is silly numbers.
Yeah.
And so that shirt is just brings back so many fond memories of playing that game on Football Manager and seeing it hanging up in the football museum and things like that. And it's a nice shirt as well. No, so the exhibition ran from the summer of 2015 to the summer of 2016, and then they returned it very kindly in the condition that I would expect.
They had a shirt stolen from there, didn't they?
They had a Celtic shirt stolen, so it was one of the ugliest Celtic shirts. So it's part of they've done a football kit exhibition, and they've had like some of the most iconic football shirts, so obviously the Newcastle one's in there, but then they've had a hall of shame with some of the ugly ones. So I think Hull City one where they did the tiger stripes, and that Celtic one, I think it's quite a rare shirt as well, so I think someone lifted it to try and sell it on. But obviously the football shirt community is a very close knit one, and as soon as someone says, look, if anyone offers you this shirt, or you see this shirt when you scour on eBay or things like that, let me know, because there's a good chance that it could be mine. And eventually they found it again. But yeah, that was quite shocking. My dad messaged me when that happened. Like I say, I come from a family of non-football supporters, so he must have been scouring BBC News website.
Yeah.
But he messaged me when that happened and said, it wasn't a Avicii shirt, was it? I don't know. No, because I think anyone would notice if that crops up in auction and be like, who the hell is Avicii Strock? But he... it's just it was returned to me, but I think they had to. I don't know if they had to insure it when it went to the museum again, just in case it. I don't imagine the excess on it was particularly large. No. It's just as well as being an iconic football shirt for me from the perspective of playing it with Celtic on Football Manager. I do think it's a genuinely nice football shirt as well. I'd probably be less inclined to buy the shirt or have the shirt if it was an ugly football shirt. So props to Celtic for happening to have a nice football shirt in the period that I started the game on Football Manager.
Very nice, mate. Well, look, that's 3 or 4 very, very nice shirts. Thanks so much for sharing them with us, mate. I just wanted to ask kind of what's coming up next for you?
Carrying on being an idiot on Twitter is probably the main thing. Carrying on the podcast, Yourfest, available on Acast, Apple, iTunes, Spotify, etc. Don't forget to like and subscribe and leave us a review. So just carrying on with that, and just anything. Things have been made obviously a lot more difficult during the pandemic, so I can't really go out and do the stuff. I go to Dubai and do influencing from places like that.
Yeah, sadly not.
So a lot of the work that I do with Calm has been mainly online at the moment, sharing tweets and sharing news articles and things like that. So hopefully once more people have been vaccinated and things eventually start getting back to normal, we can go back out and start spreading the word of Calm further afield again. So yeah, not much in the pipeline at the moment, but like I say, mainly just being an idiot on Twitter. So no break from the norm there, really.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Jonny for sharing his football kit memories with me. You can follow me and my own collection on Instagram, or get in touch via Twitter or email. Make sure you give Jonny a follow too. And other than that, I guess that's it. So until next time, I'll see you later.